We like to define things based on how well they perform a single task. This makes them easy to compare, but it only really works when the task is known and well defined. When you have a whole toolbox, who really needs a multi-tool? Motorcycles today are typically very specialized. Supersports pass cars at ferocious speeds, dirt bikes bound over impossible terrain, and cruisers grab your attention with flashy bits and booming exhausts. Designing a motorcycle is about compromise. Performance on dirt sacrifices performance on the freeway. Stability reduces maneuverability, power costs longevity, beauty lessens durability. So you see sport bikers paranoid of gravel, tourers with reverse gear, dirt bikes needing an oil change every 10 hours, and cruisers braking from even the softest drop. All these things are fine, right? You don't use a dirt bike more than a few hours a month or take a cruiser on harsh roads. Each bike is the end result of the question: how can we make this bike the best at just this one task? But this is far from the heritage of motorcycles. When we ask the opposite question, how can we make sure this isn't the worst at any task? Before much of the world was paved, before routes were well defined with predictable conditions, and off-roading parks were partitioned from everything else, motorcycles were generalized. They had to be. Specialization for road use would make a bike useless for most of the world, and dirt bikes are merely a fantasy. Adventure bikes are a return to this original concept of the motorcycle. In a very big way, they are defined by what they are not. They're not special. Their design makes it unclear what exactly you should do with them. The point being, there are a few things you can't do with them. Just not as well or as quickly as something more specialized. When European manufacturers took road-oriented designs and modified them for off-road capability, they coined the term adventure bike. The Japanese did the opposite by making off-road bikes more road-capable, calling their creations dual sports. Although the two terms have roughly the same meaning, their application endures to describe those designs emphasizing off-road or road use. Many riders consider dual sports, particularly the lighter ones, to be incapable of adventure riding. You'll hear it often in the community or come across people confused about using a dual sport for extended backroad tours. I'd have to refer these people to a 10,000 post thread covering minimalist adventure riding on Thumper Talk. I myself am evidence to the idea of small bike touring. You don't need a large engine to adventure. A 250 is perfectly fine for the task. The reality is that a great number of bikes can be used to adventure. Adventure bikes are on a spectrum, from those only suitable for road use to those solely intended for off-road use. Along the spectrum, designs occupy a number of specific market niches. Starting from a pure off-road bike, one designed for motocross, you have enduro bikes, trail bikes, dual sports, rally raid bikes, adventure bikes, and adventure street bikes, followed by a pure road bike, a standard motorcycle. Motocross and enduro bikes differ in the width of their gearbox. A tight gearbox makes for better acceleration, but limits the bike's maximum velocity. A motocross bike, although powerful, can't go faster than 40 miles per hour. Enduro bikes are more suited for road use, since their design allows for use at vastly different speeds. However, they are still race-oriented, with precisely tuned setups needing a lot of tending. Most of the world's trails aren't particularly rough, and races don't interest everyone, so we have trail bikes. Trail bikes are the quintessential dirt bike. With less aggressive engines and components, they're cheaper overall and easier to maintain. They can be used for longer periods, are more reliable, and less picky about conditions in which they are run. Both enduro and trail bikes can be modified for use on legal roads, but this requires a lot of power, in terms of electrical output, for watt-intensive components like headlights. This has a definite cost in engine power as torque is converted through a stator into electricity, even when not powering any components. So bikes limit their electric output to just a bit more than what they need for stock equipment. True dual sports have a high output stator to adequately power a full light kit and additional components useful on road bikes, like auxiliary lights and phone chargers. Anything up to a dual sport can be used realistically on any trail, with no major changes in design other than engine output and quality of components. Dual sports have an advantage over their kin, a subframe built to carry a passenger. This can be hijacked for luggage, something you'll definitely need on a multi-day trip. But these bikes have a lot of problems at high speed. Being lightweight with a large profile, they're constantly fighting gusts of wind. You can't mount a windscreen on a dual sport without being tied into the steering. Given such devices are only useful at highway speed, but they can be dangerous when off-road as you might bash your head into them. Rally bikes add stability, with a static headlamp aerodynamically blending with the bike's body. This reduces head shake from unstable winds or passing trucks, providing a safe location for a windscreen. The step to rally bikes is a big one for adventure riders, since it means making major sacrifices in off-road capability. They have a sturdier frame and greater luggage capacity. Being less concerned with weight, they are typically 1.5 times the weight of dual sports with similar displacement. This, along with an extended wheelbase, makes rally bikes much less maneuverable and ineffective in tight or soft terrain. Rally bikes straddle the line between off-road and road use. Although they are stable at high speeds, they aren't exactly comfortable, so adventure bikes make even further sacrifices for the sake of comfort, removing a lot of precise control from the rider to make a better riding experience on road. The defining component of an adventure bike is an electronically controlled throttle. This is useful for conserving fuel or setting cruise control, but having a computer decide how the engine responds limits precise user control in technical situations, a common thing when off-road. You regularly see things intended for comfort and safety on road, like anti-lock brakes and electronic suspension adjustment, handing over operation more and more to a computer. To reduce vibration, adventure bikes have engines with multiple cylinders, each counterbalancing the other, but this reduces overall torque relative to displacement. They compensate with larger engines. Adventure bikes frequently have a more street-oriented version, defining a class called adventure street bikes. The real difference comes down to the wheels, whether or not they have a spoked rim. This makes little practical difference, but it suggests how the bike is to be used. When you ride on rocky terrain, you're likely going to damage your rims. Repairing a spoked rim is pretty simple and rather inexpensive. Solid rims can't take a beating without needing replacement. As well, adventure street bikes tend to have smaller wheels to save fuel, and to reduce head shake, where adventure bikes have larger wheels, which makes crossing obstacles easier. The one thing an off-road bike needs, in absolute, is ground clearance, to prevent getting high-centered over rough terrain. So this defines adventure bikes from standard motorcycles. Each of these categories contain around a half-dozen models currently on the market, with most major brands producing at least one bike for each classification. Unfortunately, they are rarely described with these absolute terms, so keep these rules in mind when choosing a bike. Often specific models will change categories over the years, usually tending towards more road-oriented versions. Which bike you're going to use is the most important decision for an adventure rider. Every classification has its advantages and disadvantages, limiting how you can use it. Many riders purchase adventure bikes believing they are capable on rougher terrain, which they are, but only for very experienced riders. Dual sport bikes can't hold a lot of luggage and can be dangerous at freeway speeds for novice riders. Without a lot of modification, they can't be used comfortably or practically on extended trips. This is a greater factor for trail and enduro bikes. So think about where you're realistically going to ride, not on a dream vacation, but in your immediate future. If you're going to see soft terrain, like sand and mud regularly, then you should get a dual sport or lower. If you're going to see rocks, then you shouldn't get an adventure street bike. If you plan on spending most of your time on smooth backcountry roads and pavement, get an adventure or rally bike. If dirt is something you only occasionally see, then an adventure street is probably best. One of the biggest parts of an adventure is getting to know your bike. You're going to be spending a lot of time together.